The only warning was a streak of light across the sky. Then came a cosmic impact beyond anything humans had ever encountered.
The energies we're dealing with make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers.
A team of investigators thinks they are hot on the trail of an alien killer.
This was a catastrophic event. It happened virtually instantaneously.
As they try to solve one of the great riddles of science. What agent of destruction swept across North America some 13,000 years ago, killing off many of the large beasts on the continent? Why, at the same time, did the first thriving civilization mysteriously vanish?
If this event had not happened, the mammoths would still be around.
Could a perfect shot from outer space have wiped the mammoths off the face of the continent? For over 1 million years, the mammoths reigned over the landscapes of North America. The largest beasts on the continent had survived the worst ice ages and droughts nature could dish out. Then, about 13,000 years ago, the mammoths disappeared. Graveyards of bones testify to a lethal hammer blow that knocked out not just the mammoths, but many of the other large animals in North America.
Clues have surfaced that suggest a cosmic event caused their demise.
Now, a diverse group of geologists, chemists, and cosmic impact experts have banded together and think they are closing in on the culprit. This is the story of how a new theory is born. It is untested and highly controversial. Like crime scene investigators trying to solve a murder from the forensic evidence, they are attempting to piece together a doomsday scenario from the dust.
The team believes there is clear evidence that impacts affect life on Earth.
But have they really put their finger on an extraterrestrial killer? Or will their hard-earned theory prove to be nothing more than science fiction?
Did a cosmic event wipe out the mammoths? And are we due for another?
About 13,000 years ago, a large chunk of North America was encased in ice. The continent was slowly thawing out at the end of the last ice age. Beyond the ice sheets, small bands of hunters, known as the Clovis people, stalked the mammoths with their razor-sharp spears. While the woolly mammoths stuck to the colder regions near the ice, the larger Columbian mammoths expanded into the warmer climates in the south. Most scientists think the Clovis had been around for less than 1,000 years, shadowing these mammoth species and other prey. The geological record is littered with their iconic Clovis spear points, the first evidence of a widespread hunting culture in the New World. Then, inexplicably, everything began to change. The climate took a freakish turn for the worse. Temperatures plummeted, casting North America back into a mini ice age. At about the same time, the mammoths and the Clovis culture ceased to exist.
As the Earth warmed and the glaciers melted, something triggered the climate to cool again.
At Murray Springs in southern Arizona, the mammoth's demise is as obvious as this dark line in the riverbank known as the black mat. Here, the mat is thought to be a blanket of algae that grew after there had been a drastic change in the environment. Exactly at the base of the mat is the extinction layer, where the bones of mammoths and the Clovis spear points that killed them are found in abundance. In and above the black mat, this evidence of man and beast seems to disappear.
That base of the black mat is like a ceiling where all the extinct megafauna just come up and hit a roof, and then they're gone. It was deposited like somebody laid a black blanket over the site.
Archaeologist Dr. Vance Haynes helped discover this site back in the 1960s. But he is still searching for the cause of the wholesale extinction buried directly beneath this black mat.
So at that point right there, you have the disappearance of mammoth, mastodon, horse, bison, camel, saber-toothed cat. Just in an instant of geologic time, they were gone. It's been a question on my mind for decades.
One of the mammoths Dr. Haynes' crew discovered, known as Big Eloise, appeared to have been killed by hunters. But strangely, her skeleton was covered by the black mat before scavengers could scatter her bones. Dr. Haynes argues that whatever bigger doom took out the mammoths for good must have hit them in a matter of weeks or months after Eloise's slaughter.
The black mat covered those bones very soon after it had been killed or died. That could have been one of the last ones that the Clovis people killed. The interesting question there is, though, just about every one we find that they killed are on that contact. They were covered by the black. Something happened 12,900 years ago that we don't understand.
Scientists have been trying to make sense of the continent-wide extinction of the mammoths and other large animals for 100 years. But so far, no one has positively identified the culprit. One of the main theories is climate change. But the question remains, what was the catalyst behind this unexplained cooling? Dr. Haynes' read on the archaeological evidence suggests a more immediate cause.
It would have to have been very, very quick climate change, because that's what it was beginning to look like. It was just in an instant of geologic time, they were gone.
Reversals of climate, from cold to warm, from wet to dry, and back again, without becoming extinct, until the appearance of Clovis. Without those people arriving on the scene in North America, those animals would have survived. There would not have been these extinctions, in my mind.
But some think it was just a coincidence that soon after the humans arrived, the mammoths disappeared.
North America's a huge continent. To think that you could get rid of all the animals with a handful of people with spears didn't seem like a very plausible explanation for the very abrupt demise of these animals.
Is it possible that a more powerful unknown force sparked the climate change and sealed the mammoth's fate? In 1988, Dr. Bill Topping was grappling with that very thought as he examined the stone flakes that a Clovis hunter had chipped away to make spear points. Embedded in the 13,000-year-old artifacts, he found tiny metallic particles that appeared to have lodged in the stone like bullets. He had a hunch. 13,000 years ago, there was no earthly force that could generate the speed to penetrate the rock.
That might be it.
Not being the most conventional of researchers,
Great.
he loaded up his shotgun with metallic grains and started experimenting.
Almost always, it's outsiders who come into a situation and say, this doesn't make any sense. Let me take another look. This is exciting. Some of the finest nuclear physics ever done on Earth was in a garage, not some huge multi-million-dollar laboratory.
The metallic grains dented the surface of the stone, but couldn't penetrate deeply into the rock. The answer hit him like a 12-gauge shot. Topping believed that only an explosion of cosmic proportions could have created the speed needed to make the shrapnel stick in the Clovis flakes.
At that point, I realized, that's it. I was right. It was a discovery, a cosmic event of fantastic proportions. End of the story.
But the story had only begun. Dr. Topping's evidence was dismissed by the scientific establishment. His cosmic bullets were thought to be metallic sediments that seeped into the artifacts. Soon after, Topping dropped out of the hunt. But his radical ideas started a chain reaction of small discoveries that might add up to one of the most prized mysteries of science. A lone researcher came across Topping's fringe theory by chance and was intrigued by a possible connection with a cosmic impact in 1908. A meteor exploded in the atmosphere over the Siberian wilderness. The shockwave decimated hundreds of square miles of forest. Years later, researchers reported finding thousands of tiny micrometeorites embedded in the trunks of the flattened trees. Could a similar but much larger cosmic blast have dealt the final death blow to the mammoths? One by one, an eclectic group of scientists would join the chase for an extraterrestrial killer. Searching for clues to support their provocative new theory, they set off on a continent-wide cosmic hunt. If an impact was big enough to take out the mammoths, the traces of the killer might still be in the tusks. In the search for an alien killer, investigators have to deconstruct a 13,000-year-old murder scene that spans all of North America. Building their case for a cosmic impact that wiped out the mammoths would prove to be difficult, dirty work. What geologist Alan West needed was mammoth tusks, and lots of them. The trail of bones led to some strange places. At a warehouse outside of Calgary, West hoped to find the killer's extraterrestrial fingerprint gouged into the ivory. Inside Canada Fossils, one of the largest dealers in North America, mammoth tusks are cleaned, polished, and sold by the pound. The ivory is scavenged by fossil hunters in Alaska and Siberia. The ages of the tusks are unknown, so West had his work cut out for him. He would have to inspect every last one with his tiny supermagnet for evidence of a heavy metal shelling.
There were a truckload of tusks that I had to go through, a number of boxes, small tusks, large tusks. I lost count at about 20 tons that I moved over a matter of about 3 days.
After weeding through a mountain of ivory, he finally locked on to Exhibit A.
When I swung that magnet over and it stuck to that thing, I felt a thrill go up my back, just as if I'd scored a touchdown. But I thought, well, if the salesman knows how excited I am about this, maybe he won't sell it to me, so I had to contain myself.
West found what looked like micrometeorites in 4 pieces of tusk. But it wasn't until the discovery of a 12-foot tusk riddled with metal shrapnel that West became convinced of a deadly cosmic bombardment.
There they were, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them in this tusk. If a mammoth were standing when the event happened, it would have been very devastating. There must have been thousands of them hitting this animal.
Still, West needed to nail down the time of death to connect these mammoths to a possible cosmic impact. He extracted ivory samples for analysis at a radiocarbon dating lab. If the tusks dated to 13,000 years, and the metal pellets proved to be micrometeorites, the mammoths might all be victims of the same cosmic killer. From another fossil dealer, West got his hands on a giant bison skull that appeared peppered with similar magnetic bullets. Then, another clue emerged from the extinction layer. the bones of a Clovis-era horse were exhumed from a riverbed on the Canadian plains. Although the radiocarbon dating of fossil remains has a wide margin of error, the 13,000-year-old skull, packed with silt, was like a time capsule of possible microscopic evidence from around the time of the suspected cosmic impact. But to find their extraterrestrial smoking gun, they would have to probe deep into the dirt, down to the atomic level. To identify possible cosmic traces in the suspected extinction layer, soil samples from the horse's head and other Clovis sites were blasted by a stream of atomic particles, exposing the soil's most basic elements. 20 years ago, when iridium was discovered at the 65-million-year-old extinction layer, it helped to launch the breakthrough theory.
For the killing of the dinosaurs, there are people who said, no, it can't be. But in fact, it was. The difference is that in human history, this happened yesterday. If this really plays out, it's a big discovery.
To make their case for a continent-wide impact, the investigators fanned out across North America, combing the suspected extinction layer for ET evidence. As they had hoped, elevated concentrations of iridium turned up at other sites across the continent. But iridium alone cannot prove there was an impact. In rare instances, it can become concentrated through geological processes here on Earth. To make a convincing argument, it would take an arsenal of cosmic trace elements. The investigators turned to geochemist Dr. Luann Becker, an expert in the microchemistry of extraterrestrial impacts. In her lab, she ground and boiled the soil samples down to their chemical components, looking for nano-sized traces of stardust.
We're looking at things that you just simply can't see with your eyes. And yet to pluck the proverbial needle out of the haystack, be able to show that there's no way that it came from the Earth is kind of an intriguing thing to be able to do. It's just not something you can hold in your hand or put in your pocket.
As the potentially cosmic brew was distilled, it revealed a reddish hue, a sign that an alien substance might be hiding in the grains of dust. According to Becker, what she found were fullerenes, or buckyballs, strange carbon molecules shaped like soccer balls with cosmic helium-3 gas trapped inside. Buckyballs form in the explosion of rare carbon stars, and Becker thinks the only way they can get to Earth is by hitching a ride on a comet or asteroid.
Buckyballs are essentially stardust. They're extremely cool. Anything that can form in the envelope of a star and capture whatever is in its environment and hold it in there for billions of years until somebody comes along, like myself, and draws it out of a rock, and cracks it open and looks inside, is a pretty remarkable thing.
The more Dr. Becker looked, the more buckyballs she found popping up in the layer of Earth from around the time of the mammoth's demise. Fueled by this new discovery, the investigators grew more confident that their impact theory might be on the mark. But buckyballs are at the center of a fierce debate. Many experts remain skeptical of this emerging science. Could a case be made for a major impact based on evidence that's too small to see?
I think if we have the evidence that we don't have to see, but we can taste, and by taste I mean through the geochemistry, what's in the rock, then I think we can believe it. We're splitting dust into segments to study them. This is all a byproduct of, I think, the space program and exploring other worlds. We're now looking at things in such great detail than we've ever done before.
From patterns of space dust, the team thinks they have placed a cosmic suspect at the scene of the crime. But there is a gaping hole in their theory. An impact powerful enough to decimate a continent should have left a crater, but so far, none has been found. Until they can find ground zero, the big question remains. If something did smash into the Earth 13,000 years ago, was it big enough to wipe out the mammoths? In an attempt to solve the 13,000-year-old mystery of the mammoth's extinction in North America, investigators trace the fallout pattern of potential alien debris scattered across the continent. They are trying to pin down the epicenter of what they suspect was an apocalyptic cosmic impact. From specks of extraterrestrial dust, a frightening picture begins to emerge.
The type of energies we're dealing with are perhaps 100 times that of nuclear bombs. The intensity, the heat would be incredible. It has portions of the projectile. It has molten material, all that stuff heading down range. Now we're talking about millions and billions of bullets extending across North America.
As the team maps the concentrations of possible ET evidence, the trail leads them back to a potential impact zone, somewhere in the northeastern portion of the continent. A region that at the time was encased in the vast Laurentide ice sheet. The fact that no impact crater had been found began to make sense to them. Was it possible the thick layer of ice could have masked the blow to the Earth? To test their hypothesis, they brought out the big gun at NASA's Hypervelocity Impact Lab. Using glass beads to simulate a comet or asteroid, planetary geologist and chief triggerman Dr. Peter Schultz fires pellets at nearly 12,000 miles per hour into an isolation chamber to break down the physics of cosmic impacts.
This is definitely a good suspect. If you think about a murder case, you go after probabilities. Events like this have happened before. Every time I do an experiment, I imagine what goes on. If something like that happened then, could it happen again? Are we the next victims? It makes it an imperative to find out if this really happened.
For Dr. Schultz, there are two possible scenarios for a life-altering impact that doesn't leave an obvious crater. His first shot simulates an airburst, where moments before impact, the comet or asteroid starts breaking up and exploding into multiple fireballs as it burns through the atmosphere.
Oh, look at, see, now you can see this coming down. Small fragments, that's the first arrival, that hits. Kapow! If you were close enough to see that, that would be the last thing you ever saw. Oh, sweet. Very sweet. This is pretty clear. We had a cloud of debris, and the cloud interacted with the atmosphere, heating it up tremendously, slammed into the surface and created a very shallow crater with thousands and thousands of smaller impacts nearby. And it's going to be extremely easy for a little bit of time on the Earth, with all that water and wind, we can erase the evidence. And so we're left with nothing but the traces of this disaster.
The airburst experiment showed that by diffusing the energy at the point of impact, the blast might have left a less obvious crater. But Next, Dr. Schultz preps the chamber for a shot into a block of ice, simulating a 2-mile thick section of the Laurentide ice sheet.
Oh, man, we smashed this. And you notice that there's a very little crater, hardly any crater at all. The projectile actually went through and hit the bottom, but the crater is extremely shallow. The main thing we found out in the experiment is that the ice acts as a shield, and it absorbed a lot of the energy, a lot of the damage. As a result, the Earth may not have even been scathed. The ice could have cracked, it could have crumbled. When the ice melted, it would have hidden the evidence perfectly.
For the mammoths beyond the immediate impact zone, it's not the first strike that counts. It's the devastating wave of heat and shrapnel that spewed out from ground zero.
We can see the streak come in, the vapor plume come off, ejecta heading downrange, and we see these big giant blocks that begin to break off due to the shock wave. When you think about an impact, you think about getting hit by the projectile. What's much more dangerous, I think, is all that stuff heading down range, carrying with it vapor, dust, hot gas, embroiling most of North America. That's the stuff that's really scary.
Over time, the evidence of the immediate impact may have melted away. But as the blast wave rolled across the continent, it should have left a trail of scorched debris. Scouring the suspected 13,000-year-old extinction layer, the investigators found another critical clue.
I was working at this one site and sifting through the sediment, felt something hard in it. So when I cleaned it off, it was an intricate piece of black glass. I could see the light shimmer off the facets of it, and I knew right away, here's something that's extraordinarily unusual. I'd never seen anything like it before.
The black glass is the remains of molten carbon, the leftovers of severely burnt plants and trees. The team thinks the glass-like carbon may have formed in the thermal blast wave as it radiated out from the impact zone at supersonic speeds. But looking deeper, one scientist found another possible cosmic connection. With a scanning electron microscope, former NASA meteorite expert Dr. Ted Bunch discovered grains of quartz stuck into the glass-like carbon. A clue that it might have formed in the airborne pressure cooker of the blast wave.
We saw this glass which had come up and over some of the quartz grains, meaning it was instantly trapping the quartz grains. It's significant because it shows that the carbon glass was airborne. The blast wave works outward, compressing the atmospheric gases ahead of it. The trees melted, and with all the turbulence, quartz was picked up in a swirling nature, stuck together.
As they broke down the dirt from the suspected extinction layer at sites across the continent, other mysterious forms began to surface. Spongy, hollow carbon spherules. The team suspected they were shaped as molten carbon got picked up and spun by the high-velocity firestorm of the cosmic explosion. It's possible that these spherules and the glass-like carbon could have formed in intense forest fires or volcanic eruptions. So the team needed an even stronger cosmic link. What they didn't know was that their biggest surprise was locked inside these tiny black spherules. But to get to it, they would need the most precise tools in nanotechnology. Inside a high-powered electron microscope, a sliver of a carbon spherule is placed in a vacuum and showered with an electron beam, revealing its submicroscopic internal structures. Millions of crystal formations unexpectedly appeared on their screens. It seemed they had hit upon the purest known form of carbon, diamonds. But these precious stones were nano-sized. 1,000 of them could fit across the width of a single human hair.
I kept looking at the images and studying them to see if I was imagining things. There was no question that these had been identified as nanodiamonds. I was ecstatic.
Nanodiamonds are ubiquitous in space, but incredibly rare on Earth, due to the extreme pressures necessary to produce them. So far, wherever nanodiamonds have been found, they've been linked to a cosmic encounter.
The discovery of nanodiamonds has been one of those eureka moments. I think it would be very hard for even the strongest skeptics to deny this kind of evidence for an extraterrestrial impact.
If these nanodiamonds can be verified, and more of them can be found across the continent, then the discovery could prove to be the team's new ace in the hole. With a cache of incriminating evidence to back up their impact theory, they were ready to face a skeptical scientific community and finally reveal their hand. They may never know the exact nature of the killer,
But a group of scientists are now convinced that one day, about 13,000 years ago, life for the humans, the mammoths, and other animals in North America was forever changed. According to their controversial new theory, a deadly asteroid or comet over a mile wide entered the Earth's atmosphere and altered the course of history with a single blow. From Earth, the projectile first appears as a bright flash of light as it closes in at about 100,000 miles per hour. Immediately, it explodes into the vast ice sheet with a force several times greater than the world's entire nuclear arsenal. Anything remotely close to the impact is instantly vaporized as the thermal blast wave hits them with temperatures of over 10,000 degrees. In its wake, a massive cloud laced with shrapnel rolls over the landscape. Billions of tons of ejecta thrown up into the atmosphere rain down over North America. Within hours of the initial blast, much of the continent is under siege. For the Clovis people, the mammoths, and the other exposed animals, it would have been a day from hell. But as catastrophic as it might have been, most experts agree that the impact alone could not have wiped out all the mammoths in North America. In some areas, mammoth bones have been found that appear to date to after the suspected impact 13,000 years ago. In order to connect the impact to the extinction, there has to be more to it than one decisive blow. The team suspects that the comet or asteroid strike triggered a chain reaction of environmental catastrophes. First, many regions of North America were consumed by raging fires. Then came a deep 1,000-year freeze. In the apocalyptic aftermath, the last of the mammoth herds may have ceased to exist.
It can't be simply that one knockout punch. In contrast to the one that killed off the dinosaurs, this was more like a festering wound. To be able to induce this type of change, we'd have to have a pretty large event that happened to hit just in the right place at the right time that would have this cascading consequence.
The theory that a cosmic impact set off a domino effect of environmental disasters, leading to a cataclysmic change in climate, made sense to the investigative team. But now they had to find the evidence to back it up. Returning to the suspected extinction layer, the first clues began to surface. Everywhere they looked, the team reported finding high concentrations of soot and charcoal. Possible evidence that the impact touched off an epidemic of firestorms that ravaged the continent. Scientists studying ice cores in Greenland added another piece to the puzzle. The 13,000-year-old ice is laced with toxic nitrates and ammonium, an indication that the atmosphere in the northern hemisphere may have been thick with smoke and dust. There are other possible explanations for this evidence, such as an epidemic of lightning strikes that could have touched off wildfires across the continent. But that wouldn't explain the presence of the other suspected cosmic trace elements. According to the impact theory, when there was nothing left to burn, the mammoths and Clovis hunters would have had to compete in a devastated environment.
For those animals that did survive, especially the large ones, like the mammoths, mastodons, and the giant sloths and so forth,
They would have had insurmountable challenges to obtain enough food to survive.
The team thinks that the continent had reached a tipping point, and the final consequence of the impact was still to come.
This was something that profoundly affected our climate. Something special happened that suddenly made the climate go into a tailspin. This wasn't just a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year event. This happened for over 1,000 years where there was a cooling. Life is robust, life recovers. This suggests that very little did come back.
The possibility that an impact might have sparked the freak climate change wasn't lost on leading marine geologist Dr. Jim Kennett.
When I heard about this hypothesis, my initial reaction was, this could make some sense. We have these anomalies that suddenly are explained, in my opinion, by this extraterrestrial event.
The cosmic impact appeared to be the missing spark Kennett had been looking for over 30 years. In his lab, he extracted tiny microorganisms from ocean core samples. They were heated to isolate their chemical ingredients. The samples were then loaded into a mass spectrometer. From the reams of biological data, Kennett read the life story of these tiny animals. What he deduced was that about the time of the suspected impact, the salinity levels in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean went berserk. The entire plumbing of North America had changed course. For some reason, the regular flow of glacial meltwater down the Mississippi River had stopped. At about the same time, near the edge of the ice sheet, there was a surge of fresh water that began flowing to the east, draining into the Atlantic Ocean. As the salt levels, the deep currents of dense salt water that release heat into the atmosphere and regulate parts of North America's climate, suspected cosmic impact.
This was effectively a very large sledgehammer on the climate system of the Earth.
Returning to the impact zone, the final piece of their theory falls into place. If the impact had hit near the edge of the ice sheet, could it have caused the collapse and melting of the ice and touched off the change in climate?
I can imagine a scenario where you slammed into the ice sheet, broke it up. This would be a terribly unlucky shot. The shock wave would go through, induce calving off the edge of the ice sheet. But it has to happen at the right spot to be able to induce that type of consequence.
With one perfect hit into the ice, their theory, if true, could solve all the mysteries surrounding the 13,000-year-old turning point. But just as the team felt their evidence was lining up, they got some bad news. The test results on the 4 mammoth tusks from the Canadian fossil dealer have come back. While the embedded metallic shrapnel might be extraterrestrial, the results were inconclusive. The metals could have lodged into the tusks long after the mammoths had died. They also discovered that the tusks dated to around 35,000 years ago. So those mammoths couldn't have been killed by the suspected 13,000-year impact. Which brings up another interesting question. If these were cosmic bullets and they all hit the tusks at the same time, one scientist thinks there could be a connection. His big idea is that the Earth might be the victim of a repeating pattern of cosmic destruction. At the source of his suspicion lies the most powerful entity in the universe. Possibility that these life-altering events might be more common than we would like to think.
We may be in an epoch where these events are happening more frequently. There's no question that we are at the whim of cosmic events.
Rather than an isolated event, nuclear chemist Dr. Richard Firestone thinks the suspected impact that may have wiped out the mammoths of North America was the most recent blow in a series of cosmic encounters. This idea came out of the news that the mammoth tusks, thought to be embedded with ET shrapnel, are much older than the 13,000-year-old impact.
It was initially very frustrating to find a result that didn't agree with what you expected. And it became very clear that this was a separate event that occurred 30 to 35,000 years ago. How many other events were there that we really don't know much about?
Then Firestone noticed that both the 13,000-year event and the 35,000-year event had an unusual symmetry with another geological mystery. Spaceborne particles, known as cosmic rays, are constantly entering our atmosphere and irradiating the Earth. This influx is measurable in the form of radioactive carbon, or radiocarbon. Looking at the data, Firestone saw that there were unexplained radiocarbon spikes at about the same time of the two suspected impacts. Then he zeroed in on an even more dramatic spike at about 45,000 years ago, and the pattern began to make sense. The impact might have been preceded by a much bigger kind of cosmic blast, a supernova.
Supernova could have the dominant influence on the history of the Earth. If Earth were as near to the supernova explosion as we are to the sun, we'd be incinerated.
Firestone's hunch is that around 45,000 years ago, a star in its final death throes imploded over 100 light years away. The exposed side of the Earth was bathed in a lethal dose of radiation.
A lot of people would have died of radiation poisoning, and it would have created a lot of instant death, similar to a Hiroshima type event.
After the initial blast, the supernova's shock wave would ripple outward, disrupting the equilibrium in the solar system.
A supernova can rearrange the objects in our solar system, and when it encounters something like a comet, it gives it a nudge. It gets pushed a little bit, and that little bit could mean the difference between it hitting us and not hitting us.
Firestone thinks the supernova shock wave may have pushed asteroids or comets off their stable orbits. Thousands of years later, these cosmic projectiles could have struck the Earth. The possibility that a distant supernova could send waves of destruction hurtling to Earth is a chilling thought. But at this point, it is purely hypothetical. There is little data to support it. For everyone else on the investigative team, the focus is entirely on the suspected 13,000-year-old impact. Years of hard science are riding on their controversial new theory.
The strength of the case is the fact that we're finding multiple impact tracers in the various places where we have looked. Clearly, it was an event that was big enough to affect a very large continent.
Now that they have put all their evidence on the table, it's up to other scientists to try and tear it apart.
It's worth a fair hearing. Also, I think most people are going to be initially skeptical of it because it's a new idea. I think it needs to be pressed. Can it be replicated by other people? Can they find the same type of evidence? Those are the kind of questions we're all waiting for the answers about.
To be confident in impact, you need to meet several different levels of proof. And right now, it certainly smells like one, but it's not a slam dunk yet. Nature throws us curveballs all the time. So I think that's why it's the imperative is to find the evidence that is unequivocal.
Even if the evidence for a major impact passes the test, the more difficult task will be proving the connection between the cosmic killer and the extinction of the mammoths.
Clearly, this is a very provocative idea. When you talk about impact events actually having an effect on how life evolves on our planet, it's going to be contentious. But, you know, to make an observation like this and not report it to the community, I think is kind of, why are you in the business?
Some of the evidence is very tantalizing, but the overkill theory is a circumstantial case. Climate change theory is a circumstantial case. Are we going to end up with a third set of circumstantial evidence, or are we going to end up with one that is the clincher?
Of course, it could be that all these factors played a decisive role in the extinction. Recent finds of mammoth skeletons on a few islands off Alaska and Siberia suggest that the last of these remarkable animals may have held out until around 4,000 years ago. The radiocarbon dating of mammoth bones is imprecise, but most experts agree. Many of the mammoth herds and other large animals in North America bizarrely disappeared around the time of the suspected impact and its aftermath. The mystery isn't about the last standing mammoth. It is identifying the one deciding factor that sealed their fate.
I'm convinced that there was an extraterrestrial impact based on the data. I continue to think about the implications, the effect that this had on the animals, the effect it had on clovers, the effect it had on climate. If you ask me if there had not been an extraterrestrial event, the mammoths almost certainly would have survived longer. They may well have been still living in North America in the present day.
The discovery wouldn't be the first life-altering cosmic impact. The difference is that this one is uncomfortably close to home. Humans would have been there to experience it. Around the time it would have hit, all signs of the Clovis people disappeared.
This is the kind of thing that no one had expected to be true. And yet there's so few things that we worry about today that could literally wipe out the species. This is one of those things.
If the theory holds up, it will have implications far beyond the story of the mammoths.
Life on Earth has been driven by these types of catastrophes. These enormous stresses is what makes us turn on a dime and go a different direction. Mammals would not have emerged so prominently after the dinosaur killing impact if we hadn't eliminated our competition. Could life change again in response to an impact? Could humans change in response to an impact? Absolutely, yes. This is going to happen.
The Earth seems destined for another violent cosmic encounter, and it might come sooner than we once imagined. How far in the future is anyone's guess,